So I think actually what we'll do is I want to start with the patch notes. Um, we'll talk about Baptiste later because he has a lot more to him. Armor change. Basically, the only thing here is that Zarya should do high charge. Zarya does a lot less damage against armor, right? Low charge Zarya, I don't know the exact equation, but it'll be pretty similar to be honest. Um, 20% when you're really low charge, you're only doing so much, and the armor equation is already reducing your damage. But really high charge Zarya, hey Winters, what's up? But really high charge Zarya is going to do a lot less damage against armor when you're doing, whatever it is, because Zarya should be like full charge Zarya is, so what is that? 190 damage per second, and then that's reduced because when it's, yeah, that's insane actually, because 190 times 0.2, that's, so you're losing out on almost 40 damage per second, right? Which is quite significant. So because, and the other big thing what that means is that to get through like Reinhardt's armor, right? Takes you, what would it take you? It would take you an extra, so it would take you an extra like 40. You have to do like whatever. Let me see. Sorry, I'm just gonna do this math. Like, so if you do like 220 damage, oh no, no, you do like 200. So if you do 200 damage, you do 160. So 220. No, you have to do 250. So you have to do 250 damage now to get through armor, to get through Reinhardt armor, as opposed to 200 before, right? So that 50 extra damage at full, 50 extra damage at full charge, so divided by 190 is an extra quarter. So it takes an extra, so it takes Zarya an extra 26 ammo to get through. Or wait, that's per second. So it takes 0.26 seconds. Oh, no. So 0.26 seconds times 20. Oh, so it doesn't really take that much extra ammo. You cut through it pretty fast, actually. All right, so it doesn't actually take that much longer for Zarya to cut through. I mean, like in like actual numbers, right? But the percentage wise is it takes you 20% longer to cut through armor. And when you're normally full charge, you're like melting tanks. But like, Diva, Reinhardt with 200 armor will take a lot longer for the Zarya to actually beam down. That's a bigger change for Diva because like Diva's has literally no defense against the beam, right? So for Diva, that's going to feel a lot better fighting up against high charge Zarya. So that's pretty much the only like real implication of that, because Symmetra has other problems with her that make her not viable. The damage over time effects. The real question of the damage over time effects is they say Widow's Venom Mine, which I don't know what they did this, but what they should have actually mentioned is the Ash Dynamite, right? So before, when Dream and I did the testing before, the burn damage of like 100 damage was mitigated quite a lot, right? And you only burned for like, I forget what it was, but you burned for a lot less, right? Because of the tick. Here, I can pull up the exact notes. Actually, I'm not going to show you everything that I have on my Google Drive. I'm not going to show you everything that I have. Should be hero analysis. Nope, not hero analysis apparently. Do I have it under just Hurricane? Oh, you know what? I can just go to Reddit because it was the last thing I posted on Reddit. Here we go. Yeah, okay. So let's see. So the Dynamite, there's no extra burn damage. So it was 119 damage total versus a Diva, right? So it's 119 damage. Oh shit, I closed the Ash. Oh, so 119. So the Dynamite now does 175. So whatever that is. Wait, so 175 minus 119. So that means that Dynamite against Reinhardt, Diva, and a lot of other tanks and stuff, right, does an extra 56 damage, right? If you have 200 armor, it does an extra 56 damage. If you have 100 armor, it does less than that, but it's still extra damage. Oh, damn. So since Ash will be dealing more ticking damage, doesn't that mean that a grouped up comp like Goat should be charging Bob even faster? Yes. She will charge Bob even faster because her dynamite at max damage rate is 175, right? If you hit them point blank. And previously when we tested this against a D.Va who has 200 armor, you only did 119 damage with a dynamite. And then now, so that means you're going to be doing, an extra. Oh, that's really light, but that's an extra 56 damage, right? So you multiply that by, whatever, Reinhardt. Wow, now my camera's really bright. But Reinhardt, D.Va, that's an extra, 100 some ult charge, plus all the other people with armor, so Brig, anyone who has Brig Rally, right? The armor no longer mitigates that stuff. So she will be charging Bob faster, which is pretty big deal. So really the only two things that matter from this is Zarya. High charge Zarya does less damage to tanks, and because Venom Mine doesn't really matter, that's not a really big significance. But the big thing here is that Dynamite does a lot more damage. Damage boost now applies when a projectile is fired rather than when it hits a target. This is actually really big. I think people might look at that and kind of ignore that one. For damage boosting like hit scam, that doesn't really matter, right? Because you fire and hit at the same time. But for Pharah Mercy, this is actually a really big change. Because Pharah, traditionally what Mercy's used to do is they just hold healing and they try to, like way back in the day, they don't really do this anymore because it was really useless, but you'd watch, and when the rocket was going to hit, you switch to damage, and then when the rocket hits, you get the damage boost, right? But this makes it so Mercies don't have to try and account for the travel time of a rocket, right? Because traditionally, when you do that, depending on the distance you shoot the rocket, right, you're switching to damage at different times. But now, because it's when the Pharah shoots it, you can just hold left click on them for heal and right click at the same tempo of Pharah shooting her rockets, right? And it doesn't matter how far they travel, right? So the top level mercies who have a brain and who are thinking about it, right, will be able to damage boost every single Pharah rocket while still holding healing on them, so the Pharah stays at full health and doesn't get poked down by random stuff, right? So that's a really big change, honestly. Like that's actually a really big deal for Pharah Mercy if you are a competent Mercy player with a brain. Now the knockback changes, I won't be lying, I don't fully understand the implications of this, of the more consistent part. My understanding was like Orisa and like some other heroes had some inconsistencies with how far they were knocked back, according to my Lucio player. So that's basically just kind of a bug fix, is my understanding. And it might be a little bit of a nerf. I can't entirely tell. But the big thing here is that heroes that are flying can now be knocked back and slowed. So the big thing there is that D.Va can be booped out of her shift now, which she couldn't previously. So peeling D.Va is really easy with Lucio now. As well as Mercy during Valk can be booped out of res, which is really big because Lucio had no way to do that. So this is basically, I'm not sure if this is a big enough nerf, right? Because you can't get like Lucio main boops where like you're above them and you get the weird like extra distance on the boop, right? But overall, this should be good for Lucio players because there's no more messing around with you need to boop them from above or anything. You can just boop people, and you can boop people that you couldn't before, essentially, right? You can boop Mercy out of res, and you can boop D.Va out of boosters, which is massive because now you can be booping both tanks, right? Both dive tanks. So that's a big deal for Lucio. That's really good for Lucio. Whatever, sound, that's kind of nice. This, completely irrelevant. The 50 healing on Nano Boost isn't going to change anything. Anything significant. Obviously, there will be a few instances, right, where that person dies because they have 50 less health, right? But this is not why Ana is strong. So this changes literally nothing. Ana is just as good as she was before. Doomfist, this is nice, but Seismic Slam, the distance is still too short. So the problem was not the amount of time it took in between engagements for Doomfist. The fact that the Seismic Slam changed previously, where the range was changed, means that he still can't get onto targets properly, right? So I don't care if you can engage more often. This isn't a big enough change. I think Doomfist is still going to be kind of weak. Hanzo Sonic Arrow, I don't know, kind of nice niche change. You're going to detect people a few more times. There's probably a couple more spots in the game where you can check multiple rooms or multiple chokes or whatever. I don't want to put the thought process into thinking about it because Hanzo has other issues right now. That's pretty much all it is, right? It being that there are just other heroes that do the stuff he does better, right? If you want shield pressure, you have Ashe, right? Long range shield pressure, right? If you want, tank busting, there's Pharah and Ashe as well, right? So there's just other problems for Hanzo. This doesn't really change that much for Hanzo. This is literally a quality of life change to make Lucio players feel better about themselves. That's all it is. This is probably justified, to be fair. The new Fan the Hammer was pretty OP. This one, this seems like it'd be really good. It makes McCree really good for killing tanks with Deadeye. So because right now there's a very real world where people roll out on King of the Hill or something, right? On some sort of dive or on some sort of DPS, and the other team chooses to answer with Brig McCree, right? Because you have a lot of healing with the extra support, right? And you have stuns to deal with stuff like Sombra and Tracer, and you can pressure the enemy. Solo tank with double stuns, right? So there's a lot of good stuff there. And then what happens is the other team generally just go goats into the Brig McCree if they eventually lose, because the other team doesn't have all the kind of normal tools that the Zarya adds to your comp, right, to deal with a goats comp. But there's a world where the McCrees have actually been able to win those fights fairly consistently using Deadeye. You charge it up, and you can break the Rhine shield, and you can, do all sorts of extra damage and stuff, right? And then this means, against a Goats comp, if you're able to set your McCree up on high ground, and he can channel for long enough, if the damage starts scaling that fast, it means you're literally going to break Rhine shields, like, instantly. And you're going to, like, one-shot tanks, right? So that extra half second, right, if it's going to scale instead of 275, it's going to scale at 550, right? That's an extra some 150 damage or whatever to each person, right? So if you can channel for 3 seconds, suddenly you can start doing really well against that. So that makes McCree better at that. But besides that, you don't need to channel for 3 seconds to kill squishies with Deadeye, right? You just need to get it to 200 damage. So it's a very niche change, but it probably does make him a little bit better in that very specific instance. This doesn't really matter. You're not using left click for damage, right? So that's not a super big deal. I mean, it's kind of nice. It probably lets her kill things like Zarya faster, I would guess, because you're gonna do an extra like 10-15 damage, right, when you freeze them. Let's actually find out. Let's see if that allows you to hit a breakpoint, because how long does it take for you to freeze? 1.5 seconds to freeze. Okay, so if it takes you 1.5 seconds to freeze, and you do an extra 10 damage, so you're going to do 15 extra damage, right? Like literally 15 extra damage. So 55 times 1.5 is 82.5, and then plus, because they're frozen, you're always going to hit the headshot. So now you do 232.5 damage, right? So that's 15 more than it was before, and that's 215. So you still don't actually one-shot Brig, because Brig will, while you're freezing her, heal from her passive and maybe rally, right? So you don't actually freeze one-shot Brig still. You don't freeze, maybe, so with another 150, so another headshot, you still don't kill Zarya, because Zarya has 400 health, and that's 382.5. So this doesn't really do much, I don't think. I don't really think this makes Mei hit any breakpoints, right? Obviously, if they're discorded or something, you're still going to kill them, but Mei on her own doesn't necessarily do all that much more with this. The health reduce from 500 to 400 is a small nerf, because teams can break through it a little bit faster, right? But it's not the end of the world. That should still be enough time for Mei to kill whoever's zoned off. This makes Mura absolutely insane against spam. I didn't realize this, but so what happens is, Biotic Grasp, you have your normal left click, right, where you actually are spraying on people. That's 80 health per second, very strong, AoE, blah, blah, blah. But after you stop healing them, or if they walk out of your line of sight, right, a dot starts ticking to heal them afterwards, right? And this is what they've changed. So now it heals for 4 seconds instead of 3, and it's 50 to 65 health, right? So every person you healed get an extra 15 points of healing, which honestly isn't that insane, but it's 16, and then 65 by 4. So it's basically the same healing per second, right? It's basically the same thing they do with Brig, right? Where it's the same healing per second, but they just add an extra second to the duration of the heal. So so I mean, in a perfect world, right, where you're healing everybody, right? You're healing 5 players, and then you stop healing them and you're letting it tick, right? That's literally, in a perfect world, you get 75 extra points of healing. which isn't that insane because Moira basically already has the like healing throughput to heal you through basically anything, especially once you add an orb, right? So this is nice. It's gonna add to her numbers. She'll heal a little bit more. She'll get her ult, maybe 4 or 5 seconds faster. But it doesn't really, I don't think, at the core change Moira too much. It just makes her a little bit better at what she does. But the problem is, I still don't even think that's good enough because I don't think Moira is in a position where that really matters, right? This is actually really big for Orisa. 20%, you're gonna walk, 20% faster. That's a big deal while shooting. That's a really big deal. It's gonna make Orisa's gonna feel so much better to play. Minimum explosion damage increased from 16.25 to 20. This is actually a pretty big change, especially when you consider that this is in conjunction with the Mercy change, right? Do this. That's going to be a pretty big change because now, that extra 4 damage, right? You have the extra, 3.75 damage, but you also pretty much can consistently always have that extra 30% on top of the rocket, right? So Pharah's just going to do a lot more against people who are clumped up, right? Because this is not if you hit directs. This is minimum explosion damage. So this is the splash, right? So the minimum is now upped a little bit, which means you're just going to, on average, when people are on the fringes, so if you're shooting at a tank comp, you're going to splash for more damage, right? A little bit more damage, a little bit earlier barrage. It's all nice. It's all good, right? This is a nice change for sure because when you're ulting, if there is a Riptire, you want to kill it. It's not going to come up a ton because you're not really playing Soldier versus Junkrat, at least in pro play, at least not at high level. The Immortality Field being able to kill that also really nice because you need to kill that shit. This is maybe a bigger change that people would realize. That extra 0.2 seconds is like an extra because Soldier fires at like 8.33 bullets per second, so an extra 0.2 seconds is like what, an extra bullet and a what is it? 8.33333 times 0.2, so that's an extra 1.6 bullets after you sprint. So if you sprint, if you're in a fight, and which is entirely realistic, because Soldier will use sprint multiple times in a fight. Say you sprint twice in a fight, right? Which is entirely realistic. You're firing an extra 3 bullets, right? And then if your bullets are at 20 damage now, right, you're getting an extra 60 damage off in a fight, right? That's kind of significant, right? Potentially 60 damage, right? Maybe you do more because you hit headshots. Maybe you do less, right? Because you miss. But like, we'll say 60 damage in body shots, right? That's pretty significant. Pulse rifle damage increased from 19 to 20. I mean, it's just good, right? It's all it is. It is just good. That's an extra 25 damage a clip, over the course of an entire game, right? And say, you play it in crazy, long game or whatever. That's an extra, maybe a couple thousand, or no, not couple thousand. Because if you hit 1,000 bullets, that you're doing 19,000 damage off that. Maybe if it's a crazy long game, that's an extra 1,000. But so this is like basically they're just straight up increasing his damage by like 500 per game, per game maybe, right? Partially because you can fire more quickly and because you're gonna do well. Maybe in conjunction, he'll maybe do like, we'll say, so you can do extra 500, 500 bullets hit. You do an extra 500 damage and you can shoot a little bit more. So we'll say like some of them are like maybe 600 more damage a game, which is good. Don't get me wrong, that's a good buff, but I don't think it changes enough, because he has other issues, as well as Soldier's job. We'll talk about it later. I think just gets pretty much directly replaced by Baptiste. Sombra, hack cooldown is reduced by half when hacking a health pack. That's nice. That's really nice because it's just going to make your gameplay a lot smoother. Because especially once they got rid of the fact that you no longer get ult charge when somebody heals with your health packs, you don't like put a huge emphasis on hacking packs anymore. This change just makes it so you can do that, right? Because like normally you're pretty much always saving hack for players now, but this is like, oh, you can just throw it on the pack. And by the time, because sometimes what happens is you hack the pack, sorry, not heal the pack, hack the health pack, and you move forward to go invisibly, right, to go do whatever, and you don't have hack, right, for a few seconds, and you kind of waiting around waiting for hack. That just goes away now. So it really encourages you to, when you recall back, hack a health pack, and then come back forward, and you'll have hack still. So it's nice. Sombra will add a little more healing to her team. It's a super nice quality of life change. But Sombra's already in a pretty good spot, I think, and I think realistically this makes her feel a little bit better, which is going to be good for her for sure. This literally doesn't matter because the amount of tankiness um, that Torbjorn has is not is not why he's not good. He has other problems. Um, so Widowmaker, I think at a high level, I think this is useless because at a high level, people are talking about, oh, whoever's half, whoever's one, Winston no armor, stuff like that. So I think people are generally kind of aware if they can actually go for a kill already, right? So I don't think that really changes anything. And canceled on death is actually a pretty significant weakness for the ultimate now, because think about how many times because Widow as a hero just dies to so many things, right? Dies to the enemy Widow, which happens all the time, right? But especially dies to Monkey Primal, right? And suddenly now, like, the one piece of utility that Widow brings, it can be shut down, right? Just by being dove or whatever. So I think it's kind of but I don't think it makes Widow bad, right? Like, Widow already has other issues, right? Which is, we're in a tank meta, and Widow's not the best tank busting DPS, right? If we get out of a tank meta, then maybe she's good again, right? But all the same, Widow's still weak to being dove and to all this other stuff. So I just don't think this really does anything to Widowmaker, personally. This is fucking insane. That you can bowl through people while you're in the middle of 6 people. Just press E and get the full shield. That's absolutely insane. It's such a big change for Wrecking Ball. It really is. It's good. It's going to increase his survivability by like a massive amount, actually. I think this is something that people shouldn't underestimate, especially when right now the only other comp that's really in the meta besides goats and besides goats and moats, right? So like the Monkey, Diva, Zarya, Brig, Zen, Lucio, right? That's what I call moats. Between the two they're basically 2 tank comps, right? Those are in the meta, and then there's like these ball triple DPS comps. And I think this change for Wrecking Ball against goats is absolutely insane because he's able to contest so much more effectively with this change. So I think this is a really big deal for the only other comp in the game, basically. And similarly, I think the Sombra change is really good for that comp, right? If you're gonna play triple DPS. And that, I think the Pharah change and the Mercy change are also very good for that comp, right? If you're playing, Pharah, Sombra, Mercy, Ashe, something like that, right? And then you realize that, like, well, hey, look, Ashe is better now against tanks. Pharah is better against tanks because of this change, right? And also because of her change, right? Sombra just feels better because of her change, and Wrecking Ball is better against tanks. And suddenly you realize, maybe this does matter against tanks, right? Maybe this stuff does actually matter, especially now that this guy's in the game. So, Baptiste. He's super good. Is my opinion. He is super powerful. I think his kit does so many things, and like, crazy idea, right? When they create a support blank hybrid, the hero is good, right? Brig is an off tank. This guy is basically a DPS hero who adds a lot of utility to your team, right? So currently when you play triple DPS, there's only one hero who doesn't really you don't really know what to do. There's plenty of heroes who are good at busting tanks, right? You can play Pharah, you can play Ashe, you can play Hanzo, you can play Junkrat on some maps, but Pharah is just better, right? And Monkey makes sense on a lot of points, right? And so does Wrecking Ball. So the tanks are good, right, for that, because you just need the one tank. And Mercy makes a ton of sense because, damage boost with DPS, and especially with Pharah, is very important, right? As well as, Valk and the ability to help your team deal with any misposition mistakes, right, with Res is also very powerful. The only hero that doesn't really work is the flex support there, right? Zen can farm tanks, sure. Discord's, good against tanks, sure. But Zen is always going to struggle with positioning against a goat's comp, especially if they're on moats and if they have a monkey instead of a Reinhardt, right? Zen's always going to struggle with positioning because he doesn't have a Lucio of his own in that comp, right? So he can get run on quite easily, and he can, be killed quite simple. And he has to worry about taking angles, because if the enemy team is on Zen, he has to fight those angles, but the Zen, has a Rhine shield to stand behind and blah blah blah, and it can be awkward because if he pushes forward enough to take an angle, he could get sped on, right? And so there's a lot of issues for Zen to play in that comp. For Ana, the issue is that she doesn't really do anything against actual tank comps, besides pocket her own tanks, right? So that's where like Ana goats is a thing, is because the Ana can just pocket her own tanks, right? When you're playing against spam stuff, right? So we're seeing a little bit of Ana get played against triple DPS comps, because she can just pocket her tanks, build Nano, use Nano defensively if she has to with the heal, right, and the damage boost, or Nano the Rhine, he can run on somebody, or Nano the Diva and she can one shot the Pharah, right? So Ana has play patterns that make sense in goats against other tanks. But when you're playing Ana with a triple DPS comp against tanks, she doesn't have play patterns that really make sense, right? Because she doesn't, I mean, yeah, she does damage, but it doesn't feel like she does meaningful damage, right? Against tanks, and she has to, make such a sacrifice to do damage, right? She has to stop healing, and she has to, wow, this really doesn't move when I shoot it. She's just, whatever. And like, Ana's a little bit less vulnerable to being run on because she can biodegradate herself. She has sleep and stuff. But, Diva just eats those things, and suddenly the Ana dies just as quickly as a Zen, right? Nano boost when you have like a Wrecking Ball, Pharah, Sombra, something, doesn't feel super great. None of those are like super great nano targets. So Ana has a lot of the same. Oh, I thought I saw my feet for a second. Ana has a lot of the same issues, right? That namely being that it's hard for them to pick the right angle as well, and Ana ends up feeling like you're kind of just relegated to like pocketing your Wrecking Ball when he comes out of the enemy team, pumping him full of heals, so he can go do stuff, which like feels good for the Wrecking Ball, but like in the grand scheme of things, like he's so damn fast, he could probably just roll through a health pack, So she doesn't feel that great either. But in that triple DPS comp, I think that's where this guy, Baptiste, comes in. So, you are playing triple DPS on King of the Hill against goats, right? Whatever, say the point's down here, right? You're walking in, the point's here, the fight's happening, whatever, you see them running on you, you just do this and you jump up. Right? Say Busan, whatever it is, downtown, right? Where people play goats and people play, triple DPS, right? And you jump up to the high ground. Now, the only person who can follow you is Diva. She gets up on your face. You heal yourself, right? Maybe you even use this on yourself, and like you're kind of good, right? You will survive because you just need to buy time for your Mercy to get over to you and to pocket you. And once you're in your invincibility field against a solo Diva who's not going to kill it quickly, you pop your own heal, right? And Mercy pockets you. You're not going to die to the Diva, right? And suddenly they have left the objective. They're down here, right? You're up here and you're alive. And there's not much trade-off for your team. And while they're crossing, right, they're going to break formation. They're not all going to be behind Reinhardt's shield. They're not going to, all be in the Diva's defense matrix because she's shifted on your Baptiste. Your Pharah is going to spam. Your Sombra's going to spam. Your Ashe is going to spam. Your Wrecking Ball is going to boot people. Your, whatever. The fact that there is a support that looks like he can be a flex support, right, played by that person, right, because it's an aim heavier character, right? So Ana players, so Zen players can totally play this character, right, and go through the mechanics. Is super good. There's a character that makes sense now for that composition on a couple different levels. One, simply because he can escape, but two, because he contributes meaningful damage, right? If you need to break a shield, even if I'm an absurd distance away, say whatever, there's 10, 20, 30, 40 meters away, right? I can sit there and just pump damage, right? And sure, that's not the most insane damage, right? But I'm adding damage to the shield in a way that Ana just isn't, right? He's adding damage. And at a more realistic distance, say, 25 some meters, or you're up on the high ground, here, right? This is pretty realistic distance. Not, I'm trying to not hit headshots because you can't headshot a shield, right? But you're adding damage. And maybe your wrecking ball is going to go contest point, whatever, right? You just throw that down. Your wrecking ball lives for a little bit longer, right? They have to deal with the invincibility field. Your wrecking ball can now pop shield, right? Once the invincibility field is about to die, and your wrecking ball is still like very high HP, you can just start chucking heals onto point. So you can still heal at a distance, which is something that Zen actually can't always do, right? Because at a certain point, right, you can't actually put orb on people. So you add heals from a distance, you add damage from a distance, and this ability in the triple DPS comp isn't necessarily super great because you're not always going to be with anybody else, right? Generally when you're playing triple DPS, you're fairly spread out. But if you, what is actually casting this? Something comes up from the, that top corner of the screen, way over there. And so maybe if your Ashe is with you on the same high ground, you plop it down, right? And then you and your Ashe actually do like super meaningful damage from very far away, right? I mean, you see how much damage, I one-shot things if I, one, aim properly, and two, if I get the drag down properly. Because when he shoots, there is, you see, watch my crosshair, right? I'll put it on this line, right? And the wall, and it goes up a little bit, right? So there's a little bit of movement, so you have to pull it down a little bit if you want it to all hit the same spot. Kind of like Counter-Strike, where you have to, if I do it normally, you see this, there's multiple impacts, but if I pull it down properly, I can get like one big impact, right? So if you can do that correctly, you can hit all headshots and do a lot of damage. But for a pro player, that little movement is going to be nothing, especially if you get somebody who is a CS player. Like, that's going to be a fucking piece of cake, right? They'll have that built into them, no problem. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like, he's super good. Also, I discovered this. If you walk off while holding crouch and you hit spacebar, you can like bounce when you drop. So you walk down. I'm holding crouch right now. I walk off the ledge. I hold spacebar, and I just automatically bounce. Right. I'm still holding spacebar actually. So here I can I can show you. See? Oh no, over there. So I'm still holding crouch, right? And I hold space. What? Didn't fucking do it. Oh, I was still holding space. That's right. So I hold crouch, right? I fall off. I hold space, and I automatically bounce. And now I let go of both keys. Also, yes, I have 2 watches. So it I think if you're on the high ground, right, and the diva's like, say I see the diva coming to boot me, I prep this, she boots me off the high ground, I hold space, and boop, haha, I'm back on the high ground. I don't know if that'll actually be useful or not, and I don't know if getting booped cancels your crouch thing here, right? I don't know if a diva booping me cancels it, but if it doesn't, I can get back up, which would be kind of nice, right? So I think the big thing here is that he fits super well into the triple DPS comps that are right now one of the only things you can really play into goats that isn't goats. It's still map dependent, right? But it might force a little bit of a little shakeup of the meta, because the problem is I still think into that comp, I still think you can just play like dive, like Sombra Tracer, Sombra Genji, Genji Tracer even. So I think realistically all that happens is instead of the kind of, like rock, paper, nuclear bomb that we have right now, where Ghost is the nuclear bomb, right? I think we get a little bit of a, I think we get a little bit more of a rock, paper, scissors. What's the toggling between healing and damage, like animation-wise? So if you left click, right click, so left click, right? Normal primary fire. Wait, that's the actual left side, right? Yeah, I have it backwards. So the actual left click, right, is your damage. Your right click is your healing little grenade, right? So if you left click and then smash right click, there's a delay, right? You see I'm mashing right click and there's a delay. But if you right click, left click, it's almost instant. Oh, but it starts reloading. That's right, by the way. Even if I have, say, 40, I'll say 42 bullets, right? I'll get down to 1, right? I can do that the whole time, right? And it keeps going. But if I do that, it doesn't do it because it automatically starts reloading when either one gets to 0. So if you run out of your gun ammo, actually, right, and you're like, oh, hey, like my dude's really low here, but like I'm trying to like kill the guy, you know, it takes a while to run out of ammo, to be fair, but you do that, you can actually heal until you finish the reload, which is something to keep in mind, you know, that you can actually heal, right? So, but if you're playing against goats, right, and say like, you know, there's a big clusterfuck going on down here, you can like right click and then go for damage, right? And you can do that very quick, right? Right click at your ally, left click at them, right? But you can't left click and then right click because there's a delay, right? So if you are on the high ground like this, right, and you know this is my Reinhardt, this is their Reinhardt. Oh well, the Reinhardt's dead because I shot him. Oh fuck off. You can go like that though, and that's very quick. But otherwise you have to like, right. So it's something worth noting. It's a good question for sure. I love that little bounce you can do. But yeah, I mean, his bullets do 25 damage each, so it's 75 damage. You see 3 bars to the body, or 150, so whatever that is, 8 bars to the head, right? His damage fall off is quite significant. His damage fall off starts around 23 meters, so it starts somewhere around here, which that's pretty good. Everything before this, though, you see I step up here at like, you know, 21, 22 meters, and oh fuck, I missed. Well, that was 2 bullets that I hit, and that's 100 damage, right? So his damage fall off starts somewhere around here, right? Where if I shoot the body, it was less than 75 damage, right? Because it was 3 and I don't know 2/3 bars, right? So his damage fall off is like in this range. So, but even still at this range, right? If I hit a body shot, I'm still doing like 50 some damage. You know, I'm doing over 50 damage. You know, that's pretty good because this is a pretty significant range, right? For Overwatch, a lot of engages happen at closer ranges than that, and that's not hitting headshots, which, you know, better players than I would hit headshots, right? And then, you know, with his ult, he does too much damage. So I'm really looking forward to see what you can do with this ult plus other characters. You know, McCree, Ash, anything else, any other hit scan that's going to be on the high ground. I'm really curious to see what happens, right? Another big topic that people are discussing right now is how does he fit into GOATs? And I think he fits into GOATs pretty damn well, unfortunately. I think he fits into GOATs quite well, because he does a lot of what Brig does. Nano Widow full charge headshot deals 1,000 plus damage. Yeah, it does a absolute shit ton of damage, but it's also not super important, you know, because you don't actually need to be doing 1k damage for any reason, you know. So it's quite excessive, but it is kind of cool, right? But people are talking about what does he do in GOATs, and he does something kind of interesting that Brig does right now. And because Zen doesn't really do that much healing, right? His trance does a lot of healing, right? Obviously, it always has, and it's still a very powerful cooldown. But Zen's basically just a DPS in GOATs. The 30 healing per second is not very significant. The real healing, the one shot the Primal Monkey. Hey, if somebody actually pulls that off, nanos the Widow, full charges a headshot through the amp gate or whatever, and actually kills the monkey, I don't know. I will subscribe to them on Twitch, I'll say. If someone pulls it off in a real game, right? And, you know, on stage, you know, or maybe even in comp, right? But if somebody can actually pull it off, I would be amazed, because that would be super unique. And also a lot of resources used for weird reasons. But he fits into GOATs pretty well, because right now you basically have Zen is just pure DPS, right? All he does is do damage, and Brig is the one who's actually maintaining your team's health bars, right? She has her big heal cooldown in her E, right, which heals, you know, the big damage, right? Your Reinhardt takes, your Zarya takes, maybe your Diva takes, right? And then she's throwing her flail, so her shift at people constantly, right, to proc her passive and just kind of do a little bit of, you know, a kind of ambient healing, right? Lucio similarly doesn't really do that much healing. Most of the healing you're getting in GOATs is from Brig, right? So right now what people are doing is they're playing Ana GOATs into DPS spam comps, right? I think you just play this guy, because he does he'll have more throughput than Anna in terms of healing, and he won't have the same throughput as he won't have nearly the same throughput as Moira, but he just does more than Moira, right? So, because you can go boom and see, I can heal people up, and that's pretty similar throughput to Moira, because she does 80 healing per second. I throw these grenades faster than 1 per second, I think. It's like 0.75 or something. So I'm actually healing in that area more than Moira does, right? But the big difference is I'm actually doing damage. So if they're playing Pharah, I'm a hit scan, right? Yeah, for the Goat's Mirror, you still want to run Zen for sure, because you need Discord, and Trance is still too powerful of a defensive cooldown, right? And you get it all the fucking time, because Zen just sits there shooting tanks, right? So Zens have Trance all the time. But against spam stuff, this makes it's funny enough, because I think he makes the spam comp better against Goats, but I also think he makes Goats better against the spam comp, because I have AoE healing, right? I can, hit this button for more AoE healing, right? Which that button is super efficient, by the way, because it doesn't affect my ability to my resources, right? My right click or my left click, right? I don't have to go through reload animations or anything. I can just like, oh, boop, and then that's 150 healing to everybody around me. 150 healing. It's 30 healing per second, so it's a Zen orb on everybody around me, including myself, for 5 seconds. It's crazy. It's crazy amount of healing. It's super efficient ability. The timing will be important, right? But against spam comps, right? Think about playing this guy. Think about playing Baptiste, right? Against a spam comp, right? And they, whatever, they rocket barrage you, right? You just go, oh shit, and now nobody can die. And Pharah has to move her aim and hit this with her rocket barrage instead of your tanks down here. And you're all low health, maybe, right? Because maybe the Pharah keeps damaging you guys to keep you low health, and whoever breaks this instead. Well, your Lucian now beats, right? He has the time to beat, because this is fucking instant, right? Because I can react with that so quick, because I just aim down and it goes up almost instantly. And my Lucio beats now. All of our health bars are covered by the shields, right? And I hit my shift. I start spamming right clicks on us. Briggs Aura starts healing us, right? Suddenly everyone's full HP still. You've used an ultimate. We've traded an ultimate, for sure. We use Sound Barrier. But we have now survived, your primary damage ability, right? Using Sound Barrier. And this buys us the time to use Sound Barrier, right? Because nobody's going to die right now. The Sound Barrier goes off, and then I start spam healing, right? You use right clicks, hit my shift, right? Briggs AoE healing starts going off, right? And suddenly we're fine. It's a defensive cooldown on 20 seconds is a long time. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, it's an ultimate countering defensive cooldown, right? You're all in a grav, boom. You're not going to die, and it gives you time to use stuff, right? Because right now, the problem with stuff like Beat for defending against grav is that, like, you can get killed in the meantime, right? But like, you can't anymore. Like, this guy is really good in Goats against spam. So the other question that everyone's been asking is, how does this guy work in Goats against Goats? And I think poorly, because his actual shield DPS is lower than Zen's, right? Because I shoot slower, I have damage fall off, right? And when you're playing Zen, you don't need to have good aim to shoot a shield, right? You have a massive fucking target, and I can do this all day long, right? And shoot shield. And Zen has higher shield DPS. So for breaking shield, Zen is better. For killing enemies, I have Discord, right? And suddenly things die very fast. Zen is better, right? My ultimate, I think in Goats, because you don't have like, a McCree and Ashe, somebody who really wants to be using a damage boost, right? I think Transcendence is far better than the amp, the gate, right? Whatever you call it. I don't even know what it's called. But then Baptiste's ult, right? I think Baptiste's ult is really good if you have a hit scan on high ground, or something like that, right? But in goats, I don't think it's super useful. Because the way that it's worded, it says projectile. So I think Zarya would have to, like, if Zarya could beam through it and do more damage, it'd be insane. But it's projectile, so she has to right click through it, which is like less impressive. You know, I mean, I guess Reinhardt Fire Strikes could do 200 damage through it. And, you know, so, I mean, the thing is, though, you can play Baptiste and still have, like, a win condition with a grab, right? You can kill the enemy grab with his ult, but you can't survive the enemy grab with his ult, although you can use the E to survive, right? Yeah, and that's where I was going, right? Is I don't necessarily think he replaces Zen, because Zen does too many things that are unique to Zen. But Brig is an interesting one, because like we talked about earlier, Brig is normally kind of your big ticket heal, right? And Zen doesn't really do much healing. So against spam, you play this guy. But I also think that he's going to out throughput Brig by a pretty significant amount. Because Brig basically, she's propping her aura, right, at times, at basically at all times, but your big ticket heal is on such a long cooldown, right? Rally is not it's definitely worse than it was before, but it's definitely not as good as it was before. But the big thing is that Brig's ability to burst heal somebody, get them up quickly, is gated by a very significant cooldown, right? 6 seconds is pretty significant, especially since you can only do it to one person, right? But I can replicate your 6-second cooldown by boom, boom. I have now replicated your 6-second cooldown out of Brig, right? That's 120 healing. It's 150 for Brig, right? But it's close enough, right? But the thing is, I'm hitting multiple people, right? So the Reinhardt who's getting rushed, my Reinhardt, you know, I go boom, boom, and he gets a very similar amount of healing. But the Zarya who's taking cleave damage is also healed up, right? So I think Baptiste is very legitimate potential to replace Brig, right? For that reason, because he matches her throughput. Especially now that Rally's been nerfed, right? And Rally's not like as you know, powerful as before, because he's not lacking that like extra health for the team, right? And I think if you're gonna play both Baptiste and Zen, I think this ultimate with Zen is insane. You know how much fucking damage Zen will do? His orbs will do 86 damage or something base without Discord, without headshot through that. So you know how much damage and how much ult charge Zen gets from Baptiste ult then, right? And Baptiste plus Zen shooting at something will kill it so damn fast, right? Even Rein Shield will go down pretty damn fast. So I think that combo is quite good. So I think he adds more damage than Brig, especially because, you know, Brig has to sit on the low ground, but, you know, I can get above the tanks and shoot at them. Go no until Jonak or Twilight. Yeah, exactly, right? So I think in that way, it gives you a very powerful offensive cooldown if you pair Baptiste and Zen. The problem that I have with Baptiste in actual goats, it's twofold. And it's basically that I don't think he lets you go aggressive against an enemy goats comp, and I don't think he lets you play defensively against an enemy goats comp very well, because much like Ana, we tested this, his right clicks, so his big ticket healing, right, is absorbed by Diva Matrix. So while the enemy Diva for 2 seconds, you know, just holds her entire matrix on top of your Reinhardt, Baptiste can't do shit to heal him besides shift maybe, and that's if you're in range, which this is a 10-meter range, right? And a lot of the time, your Baptiste does not want to be this close to to your own Reinhardt, right? He wants to be with your Zen, you know, maybe 20 meters, right? So maybe 15, your Rein's there, you know, and you want to be maybe somewhere around here, right? And you can only shift if you're here. So suddenly your Baptiste isn't healing your Reinhardt, right? And you go, okay, well, all we have then is Lucio and Zen, and that's not much healing either, because Lucio, if your Reinhardt is getting aggressed upon, is going to speed the Reinhardt. He's not going to be healing, so all you have is 30 healing per second, right? And that's it. And suddenly you don't have a whole lot of healing, right? So your Reinhardt can get pressured very hard, where Brig can pack him regardless of his defense matrix. Your Brig can boop somebody back with her whip. She can stun somebody who's trying to get onto your Reinhardt, right? And peel for him in that way. So the Brig helps peel a lot better than Baptiste does. And I accidentally hit it. I threw it off the map, but sure, Baptiste can throw this on your Reinhardt, right? But the problem is, if your Reinhardt stays in that area when he's being aggressed upon, right? If he's surrounded by 6 people, when your robot gets broken or the robot wears out, he's still 1 HP, basically. And he's just going to start dying, basically, is what it is. The only thing you could say maybe is you do this, right? The Rhine survives, defense matrix runs out, and you can start packing him full of right clicks, right? Which, sure, now your Reinhardt's at, maybe full half HP, maybe, right? But the entire time you're throwing right clicks at him, he's still taking damage, right? Sure, he's in the invincibility field, he's not going to die, he's going to stay at whatever health, right? But he's stuck in one area and he's surrounded by the entire team. And that's still a dead Rhine, basically. That's all it is. It's still a dead Reinhardt. Because you're not going to actually heal him to full. Because, here, I'll take damage to illustrate my point. But basically, like, when you're low health, right? Like, if you keep taking damage, right? Sure, you're not going to drop below a certain threshold, but you're not necessarily going to get him back up to full, right? You'll be kind of stabilizing somewhere in the middle. And a Reinhardt that's still surrounded by the entire enemy team is still going to die, right? But Brig peels in a way that Baptiste can't, right? She pushes people away. She burst heals him through defense matrix, right? So I still think Brig is better at peeling for Reinhardt than Baptiste. As well as, if you're going aggressive, if you're trying to run into the enemy Goats comp, as a Goats comp, Brig still does more because she can get in and she can run in with Rally. One of the big uses for Rally right now is for the personal speed for the Brig. She gets behind the Reinhardt, whips him into your team, stuns him from behind his shield, right? Generally runs amok and is annoying. And while Baptiste is a backline character, right? So I think it's entirely possible that on defense, Baptiste is very good in a Goats v Goats mirror, right? On defense, where he can set up, he and Zen can play the high ground, and you're trying to just play defensive. Your Ryan is always under. He's very well aware that he's going to spend the entire time running away, right? He's always going to be running away from the enemy team. Lucio is just speeding him around, and Baptiste and Zen get to sit on the high ground and farm people. That's a very real possibility. But on offense, I just don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think this works on payload maps, by the way. This defensive comp I'm describing, right, where you have Zen, Baptiste, Lucio, Rhine, Diva, Zarya, right? That comp works on like 2 CP first points, maybe 2 CP second points as well. Hybrid map first points, right? After that, I still think you need the Brig because Brig brings utility, right, in CC that is so important to how Goats operates at the moment. That being said, of course, I'm always open to somebody breaking away from, kind of what people generally do with the comp at the time and, all that. So I think it's entirely possible that somebody will figure something out to make him work on offense. But it's really hard pressed, at least in my mind, on paper, to replace Brig when you're trying to play aggressive or even defensive on something where you're not set up and you're trying to really defend a point, right? And trying to peel, right? So, in summary, Baptiste, good hero. He makes triple DPS comps better. He's a better flex support in triple DPS than either Zen or Ana. He makes Goats better at dealing with those same spam comps, though, because he's better than Ana. And I still think he's better than Moira because he gives you more clear things to do than Moira besides just sit there and survive, right? And because I think his E has pretty nuts utility, especially when paired with a Lucio that has really powerful defensive, right? I think his throughput is exceptional, which is why he's also good against spam, though. So I think he makes spam, but because he's better, because he has more clear play patterns, mostly because of his ability to jump high grounds. He's better in triple DPS spam against Goats, but he makes Goats better against triple DPS spam, so I'm not entirely sure where that leaves us. And I think he's very powerful, potentially, in the Goats mirror on defense. But I think on offense, he's still going to really struggle to allow his team to be the proactive ones. I think he's a very reactive support, right? You don't even... because I think, engaging with Trance and rushing in with Sound Barrier and Transcendence is trash as it is, but he doesn't even have that option, right? Lucio makes your team proactive because you have speed and because in theory you can Sound Barrier in. Zen makes your team proactive because you can Discord something and kill it. Baptiste is almost entirely reactive and spam damage from the backline, right? So I don't really think he fits super well into Goats at the moment. But I think in the Goats v Goats mirror, I should say. I think into Goats against spam, where you are just playing slow and playing reactive, he's very good. I think triple DPS, where other people are the proactive ones and you're playing reactive, I think he's very good. And I also think he's going to be quite good at surviving dive. and helping your backline survive dive, right? If you're gonna play, if you're playing against Sombra Tracer, right? Sombra Tracer, Monkey Diva, dive, right? And you have a Brig McCree, I think he fits with that super well because your McCree is the main damage source, but you're a hit scan, so you're sitting there also adding damage, right, to people. And you don't need to worry about having Discord because you're not necessarily killing tanks, right? But you get dove, you start punching down AoE healing, right? You hit your shift. You get dove, you guys are low, you drop that, you can start stabilizing health bars, right? They have to kill your drone. I think he's good at that as well. So I think there's things that he is good at, but at the moment, I'm not entirely sure if he's going to break the game. I was very, pessimistic on Twitter, and I know I was like, he's going to be insane. I'm just assuming he's going to break the game. I don't really think he breaks the game. I basically just think he kind of makes everything that's good right now a little bit better. And until somebody comes out and plays something entirely different with him, I just don't think I'm going to really be convinced otherwise. And obviously I've been talking for 57 minutes now. So I've been talking for a little bit of time, but that's basically where I kind of see him is I think he's going to amplify what's going on right now. And I even put it in the context of the patch changes, right? Where I think the triple DPS stuff is going to be better. And I think triple DPS is going to be better against goats, right? Because of the reasons that we laid out earlier in the video. But overall, good hero. He's going to see playtime, but he's not going to get us away from the meta where it's still tank focused with some fringe stuff on the side like triple DPS and a little bit of dive on the right map. I don't think he takes us away from that. And I don't think the patch changes that are at the moment take us away from that either. I do think he's going to shake up the meta a little bit. And I think if this goes live in stage 2 of the Overwatch League, we'll see some differences. But I don't think any of the differences are concrete enough to drastically change the meta. I think it will be a small adaptation of the meta. I think teams will experiment. Don't get me wrong. I think teams will play other things, but I ultimately think they're going to lose to any team that hard sticks to playing goats. I think if you're going to experiment with playing this guy with whatever, dive or something, right? I think if a team who is experienced at goats continues to play goats, maybe adds him to their repertoire, you're still going to lose to them pretty handedly, especially on stuff like King of the Hill, payload maps where this guy's not going to be as good because he's not going to be able to set up his fights, his chosen fights as well. So yeah, good hero, but he's not going to completely take us away from where we are.